Well, how are we doing? How are we doing after a little hiatus and especially hanging out on the wonderful seas in the Caribbean where it was real hot? This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., feeling recharged, feeling revitalized, feeling recreated. And I missed the comeback collector servant. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And the reason why I did, because you start to recognize how certain things are moving in your life and moving around you, and you start to respect the community. And I respect the community that we're building here. And it's just real powerful to recognize that, we've been moving and shaking and developing and growing. And that's what it's ultimately about. It's not about just about me, it's about we. As long as we keep staying on that we factor, then we gonna make it. We gonna make it. And so we just have to understand that. We just have to understand that. And, before we get into, all the particulars, as we're seeing members of the Comeback Collective Circle are starting to sign in, you know, do a quick check in. But before I do a quick check in, I have to do my monologue. And my monologue is very, very important because I'm thinking about the United States as a whole and how we're being looked at from a global perspective. But there's certain things that have always rubbed me the wrong way, but it gets more exacerbated now since we've had the orange person in the White House. Not only the first time in 2016 to 2020, which led to the insurrection that occurred on January 6, 2021. But then now again, I don't know, they was trying to make sure that he did not go to jail or the like, but he was reelected. And so there are a lot of things that are being stirred up and brought up because of this vibration, starting from that White House and this administration. And part of it reared its ugly head. And I call it ugly because for me, I celebrate, for those who this past weekend were running around worrying about fireworks and things of that nature. For me, it was happy 15th day after Juneteenth. That's what July 4th means to me. Happy 15th day after Juneteenth. Because when you start to really break down and recognize how, especially for Black and Brown people, how we got to reaffirm our mindset and get realigned in our human architecture, you start to recognize how July 4th wasn't about us or wasn't for us. Now, we're not going to sit there and be disturbed by, people who celebrate the holiday or feel like that they have some sort of pride in this country, as we all should. There's certain times, the Olympics roll around or certain things, even when the World Cup was happening, even though, as of this recording, they lost to Belgium yesterday, very decisively. But it was a good run. It was an excellent run. You generate that pride or you generate that pride from your homeland or for those who are, in the respective countries across the globe. You have some sort of pride. So as Americans, we should have some level of pride. It's like you should have a level of pride of your city, level of pride of your state, and hopefully, you at least recognize the fact of, doing certain things that allow you to be okay. Hope everyone's okay over there. Um, but you start to recognize, having pride is not a bad thing. But first thing that disturbed me, and the only reason why I didn't pull that picture down, because to me, I didn't want to give it more credence than they have, because to me, they're a bunch of cowards. That Patriot Front group. I was walking around with the 1776 flags there in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, walking around with masks on their face. See, we remember the Klan. It's just, to me, it's just y'all the Klan trying to be the Klan. Y'all are attempting to bring the Klan back. And there's probably a picture that will probably end up being iconic of that, that brave young African American woman who's sitting there on the subway there in DC, that she's surrounded by all these cowards. So you notice that bullies like to run in packs. See, a bully will never do that stuff by themselves. A bully has to do that in a pack. And what it made me remind myself of as America was celebrating its 250th birthday is that at the time of the Declaration of Independence, they were still importing our ancestors into this country. So let's think about that for a second. How could we, if we have some sense and sensibility about ourselves and a respect for ourselves, regardless of whatever island we may have been dropped off in, or if our forefathers have been dropped off in, like I have a Jamaican heritage. I was born here in America, but I was conceived someplace else. So there's that duality. But just recognizing from the diaspora of Akabulan, which is the real name of that continent, is not Africa. And you start to recognize that, we were dropped off in all these respective different areas. And even to this very second, they were not being respected as an individual. We're not being respected. We're respected as consumers. And that's the reason why the Dynasty Path is so pertinent in how we're developing and growing the Comeback Collective Circle, because we're starting to create a community. So we recognize we don't necessarily have to be consumers. There's no reason for us just to be consumers. We're too creative to be broke. We're too creative to not have a piece of the pie. We're too creative to worry about what other people may think of us when everyone's always following us. So I'm not angry. I'm just speaking from my perspective, the love of truth that I know that's there and that is out there and can't be minimized. So the reason why I'm bringing that up, because I'm about to share this picture. And for some of you who are watching this afterwards, you probably say, why would he share this picture? And I had to, because I had to think about it for a second. Remove all these. Nicole, we can see the picture?
Yes, we can.
No blockage, nothing blocking it? Okay, there we go. Once expanded out. The reason why I had to bring this up, because I started to think about it. You see, Dr. Cheryl and myself were blessed enough out of our 6 kids that we had 2 sons. That means those sons are going to be the ones that will be able to perpetuate my name. When they find those individuals that they decide to, build a legacy with, that means my bloodline will continue. Even though my bloodline will still continue in my daughters, who necessarily, when they choose to become parents, will still have some of their bloodline, but there's something about the male seed. And that's why the teaching tonight is about human architecture as a part of the Dynasty Path. This young man thought he had friends in Mississippi. This young man thought he had the ability, which we all believe and should have, that it's not that we're running around with blinders on our faces if we don't recognize what's going on. But you would think that this young man would have the ability to get an opportunity to become a parent, to experience those things, to enjoy the possibilities of the trappings of life based upon his talent. He was top wide receiver there in the state of Mississippi. They already said he was definitely going D1. That means he's going to make it to the upper echelon of the colleges, and that means the NIL money and stuff like that, because now the colleges or college football now can't just, utilize these young people and make all these dollars off of them without them getting a piece of the pie. So all this was still in his future, and it was snuffed out. Whereas his friends, and you may not necessarily see me, but I'm doing the air quotes, his friends As you may have seen other pictures online, he was with, three other young men who didn't look like him. Now, I know when I had a friend or the friends that I grew up with, when we went somewhere, we all came back. If someone went off, even if they met a girl or whatever, yo, we waiting. We're not gonna just leave them there. Like, yo, get a number, this, that, and the third. You conversate later. Right now, we all came as a crew. We're going back home together. Or if she's going in that same direction, you can ride with her until it's her train stop, whatever the case may be. But we came here and we're making sure everyone comes back home. Now, once we get back home, you decide to jump back there, do your own thing. That's good. That's on you. That's something that was kind of ingrained in me. That, if I'm your friend. And what's scary here is on the 250th anniversary of this country, we see another instance where certain communities are just not friendly to us. When are we going to get it? That's the main question. That's why I'm putting this picture up for Mr. Wells. Same way they had to put the picture up for, Mr. Till so many moons ago. Or the same way Philando Castile was shot dead with the legal right to have bear arms and was killed in his own car. Or Sandra Bland or Eric Garner. And the list goes on and on. Mike Brown, the list goes on. But it's like, to me, it's just like, wait a minute. This is the epitome of seeing on the 250th anniversary or birthday or whatever it is that you desire to call it, of this nation that is not necessarily kept its own word. You see another young man who could have been one of my sons snuffed out. And they found his body on Monday morning, previous day to this taping, along one of those barrier islands that is off the coast of Mississippi. But he went out with friends. I want you to think about that, especially in this technological age where these young people, which means he was a Z, he was in Gen Z, he's in the latter stage of Gen Z. They don't go nowhere without a phone. All of a sudden, his phone was left on the boat, and he went off with some girl. He had no teeth, no shirt, no nothing, no form of communication. And on top of that, everyone started lawyering up. I'm confused. But we're really not confused. I'm being facetious. So as I know, myself and Dr. Cheryl had a great time, and we led up a trip and made sure we administered so people can have an excellent experience because that's part of our wheelhouse. It just reminded me, it's like, wait a minute, that's a blessing. But this family, another young man who looks like someone in my community, was in effect right now. We're waiting for the autopsy to come through because they're doing the autopsy. But as you can tell he's an athletic build. He was a wide receiver. So we knew it wasn't about, okay, he was overweight or didn't take care of himself or wasn't going in the right direction. Very good student. So I'm going to start with Miss Johnson. What do you say about part of my monologue as knowing you are abreast of some of the things that are happening when it comes to media as well as this story is getting more and more light as it's developing? What would you say, Miss Johnson?
I would say that it continues to make no sense. The facts of the case, if you go from this case or to, I can think of at least a dozen cases of African American males and females, it doesn't make sense. And due to the connection of the families and the parents, It will only make sense after there's punishment rendered to the African American or to their family through not receiving justice, which is ridiculous. It's interesting. In the last couple of weeks, I kept seeing this one particular Instagram video saying, do people really realize that the South won the Civil War? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Sure.
You think
Please.
about it. It's like they lost the battle to win the war. All the policies since have maintained a form of systematic for the prison industrial complex. It's still systematic slavery and
Mm.
systematic racism. So it's kind of like, you know what? I'll let you have your emancipation. I won't tell you for a year, so you'll have Juneteenth, but we still got you. So sometimes people think, oh, this is just a blip. No, this has continued since the foundation of this nation. So it's important to sit and pay attention. You don't have to dedicate your life to it, but pay attention to what's going on around you so that you can be part of the change to help shift this needle. So it doesn't become a fatiguing situation where you see another African American male or female, young person, old person, immigrant is hurt, and you just think nothing's going to happen because this system isn't made for us or to protect us. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Mr. Grindley, I saw you popped up. Let's hear your perspective about, 'cause I know you probably heard about the story or has been shared on the news cycles. What do you feel about this particular happenstance, especially happening on the 250th anniversary of this nation? Mr. Grindley still there? Or he stepped away? Let's
Can you
go.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We can hear
Okay,
you.
I must have hit the wrong button here.
No problem, no problem.
Coach, black life has always been too cheap.
Mm.
I'll go out on the proverbial limb.
Mm-hmm.
We're all Bible believing Christians. Sometimes I wonder what that means. Because, as you know, one of my heroes in the Bible is Ehud, the left-handed swordman. And when I look at the narrative of the Hebrews leaving Egypt, it doesn't matter to me the length of their journey. What concerns me is their determination to exterminate people who seem to have gotten in their way. And the beautiful way they phrase their right to the extermination of peoples is it's the will of God. Moses woke up one morning and he heard cows and sheep, and he said to the captain of the army, what is that I hear? The captain said, I saved the best. Moses says, what did I tell you? And that's when you begin to get a picture of how people can behave when they ascribe to themselves certain descriptions. And we don't hear the Hebrews praying for the enemy. I've searched the word, and I'm very meticulous in certain searching. And there is no enemy that they have ever prayed for. Their retaliation have been swift and determined, but they stand up for what they claim they believe in. How many deaths will it take before we realize the cheapness of Black life? How many times must we look at young men like this, mourn their passing, talk about it, and allow it to continue time after time after time? Sometimes my opinion of us as a people is not very encouraging, because it seems like we ask for too much. That's why I despise the word reparation, because it puts us in an asking position. How much money do we spend on soda and cigarettes and Louis Vuitton? Our money is powerful, but we seem to be the only ones who don't realize the power of our economy. We shut down a whole bus system in the South when the people says, don't take the buses for a while. We have power, but we are scared to use it. And it's as if we have no sense of posterity. How many times do we sit down and ask, what are we leaving behind for our children and our grandchildren? I hope I'm not preaching the violence in what I'm saying, but sometimes we have to make up our mind where we would, what we would like to pass on to our children. That's a concern to me. This young man should be alive. He went out with his friends. Why didn't he come home? I don't think I was born to be a preacher, so I'll stop right there.
No problem.
Thanks for my minute.
No problem. Dr. Cheryl, what say you? I know you have your perspective on this.
Well, as a mother of two boys, uh, along with you, I'm coming from a black woman's perspective, a black mom's perspective. Um, the weight that we carry as parents of black children, it's a heavy weight. And it brings up a lot of questions about the fear that we have and the generational memories of slavery, and also the systemic way of how the trauma that has happened with Black people. Now, I will say this, that in history, the Black communities have carried from generation to generation the traumas that just didn't begin with us, but the enslavement, the segregation, and out in Mississippi, it has. I'm being told that it's not stopping, and that's a traumatic thing to just have to bury your child, and then we don't really know what happened. Let me say that, and I pray that the investigations will be able to unfold what happened so it won't happen to someone else. But it requires us to come together as a community and pray that we do get justice. Um, but as I am deeply concerned that our community in 2026 is dealing with some things that has happened from years and years ago. But I do think this moment calls us to come together as a community and be able to speak to it in the space. And I think we owe it to us as a community to begin to. We already know this our city, our America has been polarized by what's happening in the White House. So I will say this, that it has brought up some feelings, and we pray that I pray for the family, and I pray for anyone else that had, you name some names, that had to bury a child too soon. And I'm just sending my prayers to to that home and to that family, and I'm complete.
Thank you for that. And yes, we talk about financial literacy on this channel. Yes, we talk about mindset. Yes, we talk about, things that you can develop yourselves in all areas of your dispensation. But one thing that we will never minimize or placate or misrepresent is that who we're ultimately called to. Now, we love the fact that we have no anger to anyone. But when you recognize that if you're not going to be responsible enough to speak up for things that are happening that can affect your community, and they would say, oh, Mississippi is nowhere near New York, it's still our community. You got to think about that. See, when I first heard the story, I was just thinking about it initially, like, wait a minute, okay. My mind already went to foul play, but then the second thing was like, again? And Dave kind of hit it on the nose when it comes, because it even happens in the insurance industry. It's some reason our forefathers were brought here who were insured as property. And now that we move a couple of hundred years later, where people, even if they position themselves to have the correct insurance, to be prepared for those ultimate moments, so at least they can leave something for their children's children. Black lives are still not as, how shall I say, insurable as other communities. And why is that? But we make up 13% of the population, but we're still the number one consumers, even in this economic cycle where costs are going up. With the Latino community right there behind us. So that's why I talk about black and brown. Since those are the particular colors they love to reference our respective communities. And so, as I thought about this young man and seeing those pictures and seeing these people walk around with these 1776 flags in their hand, and all this stuff was coordinated. You think about it, they're all dressed alike, they had the same type of hat on, same type of shirt on, walking around with this white mask covering their face with glasses on so you can't see their eyes, so you can't identify them. It's like, wait a minute. So we've moved back to a space where We're supposed to be comfortable with the fact that people can walk around like cowards and attempt to be in a space of intimidation? Is this what the 250 years of this country is about? And the pregnant pause that I just gave you was just, as Dave referenced the fact about reparations, this was stuff that they were, when you go back to into the 1860s, 1870s, these were things that were on the books that this government has lied upon. And so when you hear that argument about reparations, the Japanese got reparations when they got interred during World War II because they thought anyone of Japanese descent could be the enemy and the enemy within all over the West Coast, because that's where mainly the Japanese population were. They were put in internment camps when they recognized that most of these people were born here on this country. They wasn't even born in Japan, but because of their lineage, they were put in internment camps. After the war, those people received some level of compensation based upon the fact that the United States put them in a position that was not necessarily beneficial. But anytime the African American community starts talking about reparations, we start to make it a bad thing. And I'm not saying Dave is making it a bad thing. I said it becomes a conversation of, shouldn't we just forget? Shouldn't we move on? I didn't do that to your ancestors. And I'm talking like somebody from another community. I didn't do that. No, but you benefited from all of the benefits and the head start that you got. When we still see redlining happening up to this very second and very day. And as much as that people who desire to move into certain spaces of real estate are being priced out, not because they don't have the herewithal or the desire to, because they're being just ultimately priced out. So the top 5% and above can continue to control the narrative. As we get into today's teaching, we won't be long in the teaching, but I just had to take a moment. As much as that, I know it should have been like a little bit of levity and stuff like that in regards to the fact we had a great trip. It was a wonderful trip. Hit some interesting spaces in the Caribbean. Extremely hot. Jesus Christ. And they talk about global warming. You know, the same idiots who keep saying there's no such thing as global warming. You can tell global warming is happening, or what's happening here in the United States and even down in the Caribbean. When there were times when you were in the water and the water felt just as hot as the outside air temperature. And we're not recognizing that we may have an issue globally. But you'll have a bunch of people who will sit up in Washington and don't desire to do the real work that they were sent to do, but are just there to, I don't even know what to call it. But as my wife alluded to, you know, to the Wells family, I hope you get justice. And justice is not going to bring Nolan back, but it's kind of shameful that we're again talking about another young African American. You never know the potential that he could have done in this world. I got caught up with, you know, and I'm doing my air quotes again, with his friends. As I stop sharing this, we're going to go into tonight's teaching. As always, Miss Johnson is our barometer to make sure that we're good. How are we Gucci tonight?
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. The hidden architecture of human experience. And that's the reason why we had to start with Nolan Wells, because he was a human. Regardless of, distinction of culture and background, he was a human. For another human to be in a space where they feel comfortable enough to do another human, unless they were being attacked or for self-preservation, is just too much. It's just too much. So this teaching is starting another arc as we're understanding our anchors, the meaning, and the consciousness. It's part of the Dynasty Path series and how conditioning, meaning, and consciousness shape our lives. And this is a teaching for me, and based upon certain things I've studied and certain things I've been exposed to. So I'm reimagining it for the Comeback Collective Circle. And it's about us recognizing that, there are times that we don't necessarily even know the full spaces of who we are as individuals. And that's why becoming self-revealed, self-aligned, and aligned with those forces that we're supposed to be aligned with allows you the perspective to develop your possibility of growing. Can you read that title for me, Miss Johnson?
Every human being is born. Start that over. Every human being is being conditioned.
Correct. From the day we come out of our mother's womb, there's some level of conditioning that's happening to each and every one of us. And then after a while, you start to recognize as a child, you may not necessarily be in control of that conditioning because now it's based upon the nurture, nature factor. We start looking at the factors of the respective environments, what you have access to, what you don't have access to. All of these things are part of our human conditioning. And so, as I put on the left, every day we are influenced by the language that we speak, the experiences that we have, good, bad, or indifferent, the type of relationships that we move through, especially our culture. You know what I'm saying? The kinkiness of our hair is those of us from the mother continent and stuff like that. Those are powerful symbols. That moves the symbols. The stories, that's why when you hear us talk about the griots, who are the people that continue to keep those stories alive and perpetuating? See, certain communities, they hear us as lineage from the mother continent and say, oh, why you keep talking about that stuff? But you can never go to someone from the Jewish community and say, stop talking about the Holocaust. I want you to think about that. It's all part of conditioning. So why is it that those from the African continent can't talk about that terrible Middle Passage and what was occurred to that continent and how these people were dropped off either in South America, Central America, and the other parts of the Americas? But when we start talking about those stories or bringing that to light, we're supposed to forget about it. But other communities love to reinforce and let you be reminded that this won't happen to them. And that brings me to the last purple space of emotions. Those emotions are very important because we all have emotions, regardless if we admit it or not. Even myself, I'm not an emotional person, but I do have emotions. And they are being conditioned in so many different levels. We're all conditioned with that based upon how we interact and how we move. And it's part of that human architecture that allows us to understand, because see, if we don't get these bearings on all these things that we're influenced by, as we brought to note, that means the money that we get in our hands will just disappear out of our hands because we're just consuming it instead of utilizing it for the ability to build assets and be in creation mode and to be in those spaces, to be in partnership with others. And then you start to see that compound interest and that ability to multiply, not just